I'm at my studio in Chicago, and we are looking at self-veils, and specifically how our wrists allow for micro-movements, for different textures, and a greater sense of directionality in the shapes that we create in space. So, as we talk, right, we have many of the different joints in our arms. We have our shoulders, our elbows, and our wrists, and our fingers, okay? So, as we look at our wrists, we notice how many different ways our wrists can move because of the intricate bones we have in our forearms. And so with the veil, that means that we can move the veil in tons of different ways simply by sculpting the wrist in different shapes. So, as you practice this, even without the veil, I encourage you to move your wrists and explore which ways they can move in space, how they curve around, how your fingers attach to it, and maybe how your elbow also needs to move. Just noticing where the arm is. And so we have, right, big curvaceous movements that we can do, as well as flexibility upwards, shoop, downwards, shoop, and then also side to side, right? So we have a lot of places that our wrist can direct the veil. So while we are working our veil, right, I'm simply going to flow here, and all of my flow is going to be mostly wrist work. I'm moving my arm in order to keep the veil around my body. However, my wrist is doing most of this intricate flow with the veil, okay? And so without the veil, so you can see, it looks like this, okay? I'm moving mostly my wrist around with these larger movements of my arm. And that gives it kind of this curly texture, this folding over itself texture, okay? So once again, that allows for all of these curves and moves. So to create that curvy texture, we use the circles in order to create more like strong, zinging, whipping movements with our directionals. We use our wrist either side to side or up and down, and we use a little bit more force behind it. And so with that, right, we whip the wrist one way or the other way, but I encourage you to really use your core, use the sides of your body, and use your entire arm and the strength of your body in order to find that zing, which specifically comes from the wrist. However, the wrist is small, and you need to support it with the entire being. So, here, we have our cut side to side. So without my wrist, it looks like that, right? Without that wrist flick, we have a nice strong motion, but the wrist adds this extra zing, right? And just like in our rainbows up and over our heads, our wrist allows for there to be a little bit more of a kick up and over. Up, okay? And so without that, I have a nice movement up and over, but it doesn't have that same kick. So the wrist allows for that kick to happen. And so with this, I am kicking it at about 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock as I go up and over, and that gives it that nice kick. So one last with the wrist is when you are in some sort of a turn or suspension, you can use the wrist to add texture here without having to move the arm. And so the only thing that's moving is my body in a circle and the wrist moving up and down. And that gives that delicious texture. So it's a bit about wrists. Thanks. See you soon.